A professor at Oberlin asked Millikan to teach physics. He said yes. He said yes, just like that. He mastered the material by reading the textbooks just ahead of his students. Hey, welcome to I Am Limitless. If you are joining me for this is the very first episode, and I am happy you are here. This moment has been a long time coming. My name is Hikaira, and here I will be sharing everything I have learned about manifestation. I Am Limitless is where we talk about manifestation, reality shifting, quantum concepts, the deeper mechanics of the mind, and the stories, both historical and personal, that prove just how far human consciousness can reach and more. Every episode, we go deeper. We question things. We explore the strange, the fascinating, and the transformative. And we do all of that together. I am so glad you are here. Now, for this very first episode, I am going to be talking about something that got me really excited when I found out about it. We are going to talk about a Nobel Prize-winning physicist and what his life and one very specific, very unverified, but incredibly powerful story about him might teach us about the human mind and the act of manifestation itself. Stay with me here. Robert A. Millikan. You might have heard that name in a science class somewhere, or maybe you have never heard it at all. I know I didn't before finding out about him not long ago. Either way, this man was extraordinary. He is one of the most well-documented figures in the history of physics. He pursued science with ruthless precision. He won the 1923 Nobel Prize in Physics, his famous oil drop experiment, and I will explain what that is in just a moment, actually quantified the charge of the electron. Before his work, scientists could only theorize about that value. They were guessing. He came in and gave the world concrete numbers. Let me explain the oil drop experiment briefly. In 1909, Robert A. Millikan conducted this test with one single goal. He wanted to measure the exact electric charge of a single electron. Before this moment, scientists knew electrons existed. They had a rough idea of the charge, but they lacked precise proof. Millikan refused to settle for estimates. To find the exact value, he sprayed a fine mist of oil droplets into a chamber between two charged metal plates. By turning on an electric field, he could counter gravity and make the falling oil drops hover in mid-air. By measuring exactly how much electricity it took to stop the drops from falling, he calculated the exact charge of the electron. Why does this matter for us today? Because understanding the electron built the modern world. Every smartphone in your hand and every piece of medical equipment relies on this specific measurement. When scientists learned how to measure and control the electron, they gained the ability to build the entire digital age. This relentless pursuit of precision helped unlock the foundation for modern technology. Later, he verified Albert Einstein's photoelectric equation. He also coined the term cosmic rays. I find his drive fascinating, genuinely. He was someone who refused to accept theoretical guesswork. He demanded proof. He built the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, into a scientific titan. He proved that human intellect can conquer ignorance. And I think that is worth saying twice. Human intellect can conquer ignorance. Now, let us go back to the beginning because his story is really interesting. Robert Millikan entered the world on March 22, 1868, in Morrison, Illinois. His father was a minister. His mother was a prominent educator and academic administrator. He grew up in a modest, middle-class environment. His family had education, but they did not have wealth, and that distinction matters. The family moved to Mockaweta, Iowa, shortly after he was born. He attended local schools, and from a very early age, this man was working. He worked as a court reporter to save money. He entered Oberlin College in 1886, started with classics, and to fund all of it, he worked in a sawmill, he worked as a court stenographer, he was the student director of the college gymnasium. The man was doing a lot. Like, a lot. And honestly, that might have been the exact season of his life when he started, consciously or not, to manifest his ideal future. If what Neville Goddard said is accurate, that is. But we will get to Goddard, do not worry. What I want you to take from this part of the story is simple. Millikan leveraged raw determination. That is a mindset we all need to adopt. You dictate your own success, regardless of where you started. Do not let your circumstances define your limits. Command your reality through focused effort. Period. Okay, now here's the part of his story that completely made my jaw drop. A professor at Oberlin asked Millikan to teach physics. He had zero prior experience teaching the subject. None whatsoever. And he said yes. He said yes, just like that. He mastered the material by reading the textbooks just ahead of his students. He was literally one chapter ahead the whole time. He earned his bachelor's degree in 1891, his master's in 1893, then went on to Columbia University, where in 1895 he earned his PhD in physics. He became the first person to ever receive a physics doctorate from Columbia University. I admire that so much. Taking a teaching job in a subject you do not yet know, that is not recklessness. That is supreme confidence. Most people would shrink from that. Most people would say, I am not qualified. I am not ready. Let me wait until I know more. He did not shrink. He walked straight into the unknown and conquered the entire field. So I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. Are you shrinking from the challenge in front of you right now? Or are you ready to command your reality the way he did? All right, I want to be completely transparent with you about what we actually know and what we do not. There is a famous affirmation attributed to Robert Millikan. You may have come across it before. It goes, I have a lavish, steady, dependable income, consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. Beautiful, right? Really powerful. But the truth, and I am not going to sugarcoat this, there is no historical documentation that confirms Millikan ever said or wrote that. Not one. None of his biographies, none of his papers, none of his recorded writings contain anything like it. So where does it come from? The source is Neville Goddard, one of the most influential teachers of the law of assumption and manifestation. Goddard shared this story during his 1951 radio lectures in episodes called Be What You Wish to Be and The Secret of the Sperm. In those accounts, he attributes the information to a newspaperman who allegedly had personal knowledge of Millikan's private practices. And Goddard himself admitted the wording might not be verbatim. So what do we have? We have a second-hand account of an unverified event. And this is the part I really need you to hear. That does not mean the principle behind it is worthless. According to Goddard's account, Millikan, who was facing real financial struggle early in his career, locked himself in a room and repeated that one affirmation for 16 hours straight. Some versions say 15, but the number is not really the point. The goal was total saturation, to flood the subconscious mind so completely that the external reality of financial struggle becomes irrelevant, and the internal reality of abundance became the only thing the mind could hold as fact. I personally call this the broken record technique, or if you want the less glamorous name for it, pestering or nagging technique. Yes, pestering or nagging. Think about a toddler. You know how a toddler asks for something? They do not ask once. They do not ask twice. They ask with absolutely zero shame and infinite persistence until the parent gives in. That is the logic here. You are pestering your subconscious, which is the parent, with the same demand over and over until it finally accepts it as the new reality and stops fighting you. Now, from a cognitive science perspective, this actually tracks. When you repeat a statement for hours, the brain starts struggling to hold the tension between what you are declaring internally and what exists externally. That tension, that cognitive dissonance, eventually cracks. The part of your conscious mind that would normally say, "that is not true," gets bypassed. The affirmation slips directly into the subconscious as fact. A new neural pathway forms. And slowly, an aspiration becomes an assumption. And that assumption becomes being. That last part is everything, by the way. In Goddard's framework, entering the state of being, not just assuming, but truly being, is what makes manifestation work. You are not reaching for it anymore. You already are it. Now, I went deep on this. I searched for any direct connection between Millikan and these kinds of ideas. I wanted receipts. And while I found nothing that confirmed the 16-hour story, I did find something that made me stop and go, okay, this makes sense. Millikan wrote extensively about human consciousness. He defined the physical universe as, and I love this, the physical garment of a cosmic mind. He refused to see the human brain as a biological accident. He called it the greatest miracle in existence. He wrote about the union of science and religion, two things most people treat like opposites. He viewed the entire physical universe as the direct expression of a supreme cosmic intelligence. He believed humans have the free will to understand the grand design. In his book, Evolution in Science and Religion, he argued that science literally reveals the spirit of God working through natural laws. He believed human intelligence shares a direct connection with universal creation. So, while I cannot confirm what Goddard described, I can say this. Millikan clearly understood that the mind was something extraordinary, something far beyond a biological machine. And based on everything he believed, it is not a stretch at all to imagine he would have used that power with intention. Now, let me address something, because I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. If someone locks themselves in a room for 16 hours affirming, "I am a billionaire," are they going to walk out a billionaire? Probably not. Unless there is a legitimate glitch in the matrix where you shift or jump into that reality where you are already a billionaire. And look, those shifts can happen, but they are not common. And honestly, most people would not be able to handle a shift that sudden and extreme. It would be disorienting in a way that is really hard to describe. The point of the 16 hours is not an instant material result, which is completely possible, but not applicable for all. The result, the real immediate result, is internal, on the 4D. It is a total shift in self-concept. You stop being the struggling version of yourself. You become, in your own mind, someone who is already there. And from that new internal place, your life starts to unfold to match it. Think about it this way. If Millikan truly did this, the certainty he walked away with might have been exactly what gave him the relentless drive to spend years on the oil drop experiment, because he already knew it would lead somewhere great. It would have made him more alert to the right mentors, the right opportunities, the right funding. Not through magic, through a mind that was simply tuned differently. And if all manifestations were instant in the 3D, we would all be in the non-physical world by now. Our thoughts alone would eliminate this reality. Can you imagine the catastrophe? Even the most positive person has their share of dark thoughts. Sometimes what we think we want is not actually what we want. Sometimes we need to learn something first. Sometimes our future selves are literally stopping us from getting something that does not align with who we are becoming. And yes, our future selves can try and can delay or prevent us from getting something that does not align with our best interest. We all have access to what we perceive as past, present, and future, and it can be changed. I'll explain this better in another episode. My point is that not all manifestations are meant to be exactly instant. Millikan did not affirm for something that could have been manifested instantly exactly. He affirmed to shift his whole life. Things were constantly manifesting in his reality. Some things might have manifested instantly, and some might have taken some time. This means everything was unfolding throughout his life until the end. Some people assume he just affirmed that one time and never did it again, and that it took him years to manifest what he desired. That was not the case. I personally do not believe he just did it once. That one time, if it was just once, was the foundation, but he continued rewiring his brain throughout his life. He did not manifest one single thing, he manifested almost everything in that one long sentence, and that is the smart way of manifesting. We do not know anything about his personal, private life. We do not know his exact technique for manifesting his desired life. We just have to speculate, because he left nothing behind. Millikan was a physicist, therefore he knew what he was doing, and there is evidence that he did great. He manifested a lavish life. If your desire hasn't shown up, worry not. Remember, everyone is on a different journey. You came here on a mission. Sometimes a lesson needs to be learned before a big, life-changing shift. Sometimes you just have to let go. Perhaps there is something or someone better, but you are dead focused on the lottery, on Joe, or on Julie. Perhaps you just need the right method or technique that resonates with you. Or you just need to regulate your nervous system so you can relax and allow greatness to come into your life. But whatever your case is, it is okay. You are doing amazing, and you are exactly where you're supposed to be, right now at this moment. The time between the seed and the harvest is not punishment. It is preparation. Even Neville Goddard himself taught that while the change in consciousness is instant, the physical manifestation has its own appointed hour, its own interval of time before it shows up in the world. That interval is not passive waiting. It is the period where your conviction gets tested, where you are asked to live as if the desire is already real, even when everything around you is saying otherwise. That sustained faith is what hardens the new belief into undeniable fact. And when it finally arrives, it does not feel miraculous. It feels inevitable. My personal experience, this is not just a theory for me. Since 2017, before I ever heard of this method, before it had any name at all, I was already doing something very similar. I would spend hours writing a single affirmation, or I would script out long, detailed stories about my ideal self, my ideal life, everything. I never hit 16 hours in one sitting, not even close, but the intensity was the same. The focus was the same. And back then, I used to literally say that I sounded like a broken record because I was repeating the same line over and over and over again. When I discovered the Millikan method, it was a revelation. Not because it was new to me, but because it had a name. Because someone else, a Nobel Prize winner apparently, had done something similar, and it worked for him. What I love most about this technique is the simplicity of it. You give your mind zero room to doubt. The repetition creates this mental vacuum where every conflicting thought just gets starved of energy. You are not sitting there analyzing the how. You are not spiraling about the when. You are just forcing your mind into one singular, unwavering state of intention. Conviction over complexity. Every single time. Okay, let's be realistic. This method is not for everyone. Time is a real barrier. So is discipline. But the biggest one, the one most people do not talk about, is mental strength. Sitting with one thought, one sentence for hours and refusing to let anything else in, that requires a specific kind of focus that most people have simply never trained. Due to many things, attention span is declining. Most people do not have the mental strength to do this. And I want to be really clear about this. You do not need this method to manifest. If what you are doing is already working, stick with it. Do not fix what is not broken. But if you are someone who has genuinely tried everything and nothing is landing, and you have the mental strength, the time, and the discipline, then maybe, as a last resort, this is worth trying. You do not have to lock yourself in a dark room. You can affirm throughout your day, out loud, in your head, while you are doing the dishes, driving, walking, etc., etc. The core principle is the same. You are replacing an old, resistant pattern with a new, non-negotiable one. And over time, your brain stops fighting it. It accepts the new command as truth. You start feeling it, and that feeling is the catalyst. That is when the rewiring accelerates. That is when it starts to become real. So, to bring this all together, Robert A. Millikan was a pillar of scientific rigor, a man who demanded proof, who quantified the invisible, who built institutions and earned the highest honors in his field. Whether or not he ever spent 16 hours in a room repeating a sentence about lavish income, that story, verified or not, points to something that is very real: the power of absolute conviction. Then maybe that is enough. Whether you come at this like a scientist, through discipline and repetition and measurable self-observation, or like a mystic, through total immersion in the feeling of the wish already fulfilled, the destination is the same. Mastery of your reality begins with an unwavering belief in the outcome you desire. I hope this gave you something to think about today. I genuinely want to know, is this something you would be willing to try? Let me know in the comments. If you made it this far, thank you. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one. And